Eamon Khan here for Seconds Out. Pleasure to be in the company of once again, albeit via Zoom. Hoping to do an interview with you in person. It's been have we? I don't think we've done one. Have we, Duke?
No,
Person?
no,
Ah.
no. We have. We've never done one in person, Emma. And I'd look forward to it as much as you would have, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Let's get straight into the talk of boxing, and the headlines, at least over here, will be dominated on the Sunday about Moses Itauma and Dillian Whyte and the way that fight ends. What's your expectation for that heavyweight fight between the rising talent in Itauma and the veteran in Dillian Whyte?
Well, it's such a good fight. It's an intriguing fight because what you've got here clearly is one guy on the ascendancy on the way up and another guy that's on the way down. So the question's got to be asked, how much has Dillian Whyte got left? Now, if you read his body language and the way he's actually carrying himself, he sounds to me like he's I'm not going to say disinterested, but I don't think that fire that used to be in his belly is clearly not there anymore. That's what I'm picking up. His body language doesn't look good. So whether or not he's just going to survive and then get through as many rounds as he can, which is probably what I might suggest he would do. I mean, he's a proud man if nothing else. At this stage in his career, he won't want to get knocked out. Of course he won't. But I don't think for 1 minute, not for 1 minute, he really believes he can win the fight. So that would then lead me to believe he's in there to survive. And the hardest kind of opponent to take out is a guy that's already made up his mind that doesn't want to get knocked out. They don't engage. They don't open up. So I think this fight will go a few rounds personally. I think Itauma, by the way he's talking, he's looking for a longer fight as opposed to a quick finish. A quick finish doesn't do Itauma any good anyway. He needs the rounds. Believe you me. If he is as good as what he's, as what they say he is, then in his mind he should be calculating 6-8 rounds. About 8 rounds I see this fight going. If he goes a good 8 rounds against Dillian, that's a good benchmark. You can sort of gauge him better, see how he reacts later on in the fight, rather than just sort of going in there and blowing him out in 2 or 3 rounds. Tells you nothing. He looks great on paper. He's got a good name on his scalp on paper, but doesn't tell you anything about him at all.
I'm not talking to you as just a pundit, Duke, former freeweight world champion in yourself. And I wonder, when it comes to being a veteran in the sport, when did you realize, at what age did you realize that you didn't have youth on your side? You couldn't quite do what you could before. And at 37 for Dillian Whyte for heavyweight, it's a little bit different because heavyweights go on a little bit longer. But what have you seen in Dillian that says to you, like, this is a guy who isn't in the peak of his pomp?
Well, I've watched his last fight, couldn't pull the trigger. Looked totally flat. Admittedly, he's got himself in decent shape for this fight as opposed to his last one. His last fight, he looked like he didn't train. He looked like he just couldn't be bothered. He just wanted to turn up, nick the money and run. But for this fight, got himself in really good nick. He looks physically very good. But that only takes you a couple of rounds. And then mentally, you quit, you give up. You're going through the motions. Dillian Whyte's not about to go down easy, I'm sure. He's not just going to roll over for Moses Itauma. I don't see that happening. But in his mind, he's saying, you know what? I just need as many rounds as I can, put up a good show as best I can, and what will be, will be. I think that's his attitude. This isn't the same Dillian Whyte that was ready to rip your head off at a press conference or a weigh-in, young, hungry lion. This is an old guy now. He's got a lot of miles on the clock. I don't want to write him off completely. Again, heavyweight boxing, you're one punch from victory, one punch from disaster. He could get lucky. It's highly unlikely.
When did you realise that you weren't as youthful in your performances in your career?
When I hit 30, 31, my legs were just dead. My legs were like, every time I tried to skip or run, my legs just felt really, really heavy. And it actually hurt. And when you're training and it hurts, really that's the time you've got to give up. But when you're going through a divorce and you only boxing's all you know and boxing's all you do, and it's the only way you can make decent money, then you return to the sport and you say to yourself, you know what, I've got 1 or 2 left in me. It's all lies, obviously. You just lie to yourself. When you look at Moses Itauma's record, he's had like 12 fights. He's had a dozen fights. So he doesn't have a lot of experience to draw on. On the other hand, Dillian White's got, I think, 196 or odd rounds under his belt, which he can draw on. But those rounds take their toll. And unfortunately for Dillian, like I say, he's at the end of his career. There's no if, buts, or maybes about it. Like I say, I don't want to be disrespectful to the guy because he's been a great servant to the sport of boxing. You know, we've had the Fury fights, you know, which were pretty decent. You see what I mean? We've had the AJ fight, again, decent, carried himself well. So, but he's not that guy anymore. He can't pull the trigger anymore. I'm sure, you know, he'll throw punches on a wing and a prayer in the hope that they'll land in the general direction where I hope they'll land. But I would imagine after about 3 rounds, 4 rounds, Talma should start picking him apart. It should be over by about the halfway mark, about 8 rounds, I think, just over the halfway mark. I see it going about 8 rounds, which is a good learning fight for Talma. I hope he doesn't go in there and blow him out straight away because Talma needs these rounds.
Conversation surrounding Talma leads him to, if he gets the victory over Dillian Whyte, to be in the mix for a shot at Alexander Usyk. In an ideal world, would you put the heavyweight in a few more fights before he has a shot at Alexander Usyk, or do you feel he's ready for that opportunity?
No, he's nowhere near ready for Alexander Usyk. You know, I know we've had this conversation before, and I'll reiterate what I've said before. Nobody's ready for Alexander Usyk. There's not a heavyweight on the planet right now that's going to beat him. He's in a league of his own. And if they want to ruin that boy, which I'm sure they don't, because when you listen to Frank Warren and the other guys all talking about Alexander Usyk, there's no real authority and there's never going to be any negotiation. Usyk won't wait around for Moses Itauma. He won't. You know, one more fight he's talking about, and then he's going to call it curtains. So I think Itauma will get a vacant title fight, possibly against Joseph Parker, or somebody of that sort of standing. You see what I mean? Joseph Parker's the front runner, obviously.
Moving on to a different tack, then I think since we last spoke, it's now been officially announced that Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn are in that rematch later on this year, and it's been confirmed as well too that the fight will be taking place at the same weight for Eubank Jr. on the 160 on the Friday, and then having to weigh no more than 170 on the fight night as well. The same stipulations as the first fight, given what came out in the aftermath of how Eubank Jr. was weight drained, dehydrated, and had to spend time in hospital, as was reported. How do you feel about the rematch taking place?
In this world that we live in, this absolutely batshit bonkers world that we live in, fighters, people put their lives on the line for money. How much is enough? Why he wants more money? I mean, listen, they say he's going to get another 10 million. It's a lot of money. It's almost impossible to say, I'm going to walk away from it. I'm not going to take it. So, again, he's doing it for the money. I wish he wouldn't, because he's got out of jail the last time. God forbid, what if he doesn't get out of jail this time? He might have 20 million in the bank. It's no good to him. You know, it's no good to him. What's he going to do? You know, that's not going to buy him his health. Again, let's just hope both boxers come out of this unscathed. I think the result will be the same. I don't think Conor Benn can improve on his first performance. He didn't do enough in the first fight. I thought Eubank won it. I expect Eubank to win it again. I wish Eubank would just wise up and just keep saying and say to himself, you know, you don't play boxing. It's not a game. You don't just pass the ball when you get tired down the wing. You know, you can't. There's no way. There's no get out clause when you're in that square circle. I just hope that he gets out with his health and he can nick a few quid. You know, the damage might not necessarily be done now. The damage he's doing to himself could take 5 or 10 years to surface. You can't keep dragging and making weight. I can remember the first time when I lost my first world title, the pain, the torture that I went through to make the weight was exactly what I see with Eubanks. The sweating out, the sweat gear, the sleepless nights. You know, you do like a 4 or 5 mile run the day before the fight, and you barely break a sweat. It's horrible, which is why Eubank's been going to the sauna and that kind of stuff to make sure he gets the sweat on so he can do the weight. I wish this fight was governed by a governing body and they pulled the plug on it in an ideal world, but they won't because there's too much money involved. So the fight will go ahead and Eubank will win again.
Sorry, Jake, I forgot. I had muted myself. So when it comes to Eubank Jr. and the possible routes he could have gone, a lot of discussion about Eubank Jr. amongst the hardcores as to whether he could win a world title. I believe you were on the broadcast with Prince Nazim when he was told to retire because he was essentially done from the sport. But when it comes to Eubank Jr.'s options, of course, world titles mean that it's not as much money as there would fighting Conor Benn, given the nature of the fight. But do you feel Eubank Jr. is a fighter who has the capacity to win a legitimate world title?
Too late now. It's much too late. So many miles off the clock. Don't put the ambition now to fight a world-ranked, good middleweight stroke, super middleweight. Don't think he's got that in his locker anymore. I really don't. I don't blame him. I'd do the same if I was in his position. Like I say, 10 million is a lot of money. God forbid, even if you don't make it, then you set your kids up for life. I shouldn't laugh about it because it's not funny. It's really not. But, listen, whatever his reasons are for not fighting for a world title, because with his name, they could have probably walked him into a vacant title fight or even fight somebody that was a legitimate champion at middleweight or super middleweight, but it hasn't happened. Maybe that's because he knows in his heart of hearts he ain't really got what it takes to win a world title.
Alongside the theme of weight disparities or discrepancies within boxing and making those fights, there's been an interesting call out this week, and that was Andre Ward, who said he would return to the ring and he wants to take on one fighter that's on the top of his list, and that's Anthony Joshua. Had you seen that call out, and does that fight interest you in any way?
It doesn't interest me. I don't know why. Again, I shouldn't keep saying that. I know exactly why Andre Ward said it. It would be a huge payday for him. He could probably take that fight. Don't know if he wins the fight because I don't know if he's actually big enough. But, I mean, nothing surprises me these days. Nothing surprises me in the sport of boxing. You got Mickey Mouse fighting King Kong. You got AJ getting called out by just about everybody that's got breath now, because he's the golden ticket. And I think that's quite a little bit sad from where AJ's coming from. Two-time world champion, and now everybody's calling him out. And his brother, everybody's calling out AJ. Because again, it's a huge payday if you can secure that one. And AJ's not the fighter that he once was. So, you know what? I think anybody that fights AJ would roll the dice and take a chance.
Throughout the history of boxing, there has been moments where some of the greats have entertained fights like this. For example, Muhammad Ali was in the ring with Antonio Inoki. If the greats have done it before, can it not be done for this current generation as well, to entertain the likes of Jake Paul and have fights with them?
Yeah, I'm not saying that AJ shouldn't do it. On a personal level, I wouldn't like to see it because I'm a boxer, a former boxer, former world champion. So I look at AJ and I say to myself, does he need the cash? I think he's got more money than he can actually spend. His personal wealth is well in the excess of gazillions. So he's earned so much money. How much is enough? I don't like to say, the only reason I don't really agree with it, I don't really like the fact, because I genuinely, and I mean this sincerely, I genuinely would fear for Jake Paul's life. I really would. He's too easy to hit. If you know that saying, the last thing to go from any fighter is their punch. AJ's punch resistance, he may not have anymore, but he can still punch extremely hard. He's a trained athlete. That's my reason for not particularly wanting to see that fight. I wouldn't want to see it because I would fear genuinely for Jake Paul's life. And then where would that put boxing?
And speaking about the state of boxing, there's been a movement in terms of a promoter finding and landing a broadcaster. Ben Shalom and Boxer move to the BBC now and have their fights broadcasted on the BBC in some capacity. What do you feel is the impact for boxing, having boxers still in the game and on what we believe to be terrestrial TV, or at least BBC in some form?
Well, isn't it great for the sport? First you got Turkey al-Sheikh turning the sport on its head and paying everybody above and beyond. And now you got the BBC coming back into boxing. I worked with the BBC for many, many years back in the day, and both on the TV and radio. So I've thrown my hat into the ring. Maybe they'll pick me up again, and reignite my commentating career. We had some fabulous times. Me and John Rawling, who's a real good guy, great commentator, knows his stuff, knows boxing inside and out. And one of the great things about working with John is that he lets you talk. He doesn't try to talk over you. He's great like that. He lets you talk, express yourself, and say what you've got to feel. You say what you feel. So maybe it'll happen. Fingers crossed. But like I say, we'll have to just wait and see.
Duke, that's the extent of my questions for today. A pleasure once again speaking to you and getting your insights. Hopefully we do see you on the BBC, and hopefully I get to see you in the flesh in person and do an interview with you. Thanks for speaking to Seconds Out.
I wanted to just say one more thing. Sure. Everybody's talking about Moses Itauma, who is a fantastic prospect, no doubt. But people are forgetting about as a Caballero.
Yeah.
That kid can fight. Now I tell you something. If I was a gambling man right now, I don't want to. I'm not, trying to make any of these bold predictions and create any kind of drama. But I tell you what, I think Caballero would give Moses Itauma life and death. He really would. That guy's a handful, and he would be so up for this. Boy, I mean, listen. I'd rather Moses Itauma fight Joseph Parker than Caballero for a long time.
Interesting take. Duke said it first. Keep your eye on that one in the future if that does materialise. Duke, once again, thanks for speaking to Seconds Out, sir.
Thanks, champ. Appreciate you. Thanks very much.
You too.
Man.